go. Zoom out a little bit. Okay. So if we just open up architectural design, feet in inches, there's the option to choose the template here at the opening screen. We'll get a very basic environment here with the scale figure. The scale figure changes every year. They give it a name, give him or her a name, so you can identify different versions of SketchUp based on where the scale figure is. I'm going to show you the basics of geolocation, but we're not going to use it. And that's because Trimble no longer has a partnership with Google. So they have contracted with a different mapping agency. And we'll see what happens with that. So, to start off the bat, we're just going to go to File, Geolocation, Add Location. And we can enter an address, we can enter Muncie as a downtown. Doesn't matter there, just choosing your municipality, selecting either the map or the satellite view. But once we get into the nitty-gritty, you start to see very quickly that this is no longer Google. This is Digital Globe. And Digital Globe is a different mapping service. You can see the hotel is missing, the parking structure is missing, so this is part of what is called the OpenStreetMap. OpenStreetMap is an open source mapping colony or collective or co-op in which folks contribute to the mapping of their communities. It is totally free and totally open source, but we're not looking at an aerial that by any stretch of the imagination is current. So the old bank teller building here next to Mutual is one example of that. They tore that down 2 summers ago because they really wanted those 6 additional parking spots. They really, really needed those. It does give us, though, the ability to bring in a section or a portion of the street or neighborhood we're working in and start to bring that in as imagery. So there's a window here where you can adjust it. There is a minimum, there is a maximum in terms of what size you can bring in. And we can grab that, and it will come in, and it will look something like that. It's okay. It's not great. It's going to put the copyright symbol right there. But this is okay for some things, but it's not an up-to-date image, not as up-to-date as the 2-dimensional satellite image in Google Earth, which is basically just over a year old or 2 years old at this point. And the further you zoom in, the bigger this copyright symbol is. So the advantages of using this is that your model is now digitally located. It's absolutely located on the Earth where it is. Anything that you do here can be immediately exported into something that can be opened up in Google Earth later on. No problem there. But you can always post geolocate a model later on. And we'll go more into that in future modules when you're massing out your entire development proposal. But this brings in a fairly low resolution aerial photo from Digital Globe, which is 2 to 3 years old. So it's not great for our purposes now. It's not great for this particular module. It will work okay for future modules. But that's just an example there of what that will start to look like. It is helpful for other places. So for instance, if I go to Ohiopyle, Pennsylvania, that's Ohiopyle. Some of you may have done the Class 3 whitewater rapids there. Pretty close to Pittsburgh. You can see there's kind of a horseshoe bend here in the landscape, tiny little borough of 75 people. We've done some consulting there for a lodging facility because about 3 million people pass through this area per year, either visiting the 2 Frank Lloyd Wright houses on either side or folks who are shooting the rapids. Folks really like to get into the water right over here, come through these Class 3, Class 4 rapids, then portage out like so, and then shoot it again, shoot it again, shoot it again. So it's a popular state park in the Pennsylvania system. So if we were to do that, if we were to look at Ohiopyle in SketchUp, we would go then to add location once again, type in Ohiopyle, Pennsylvania, just as an example, and there are plenty of other examples. You can see this is as much as we can select here. And we can zoom in a little bit, or we can select basically the whole town, the whole borough, and all the rapids. Grab, bring it in to SketchUp, and it'll look something like that. Now that's flat, so if I go back to File, Geolocation, Show Terrain, it will give me the terrain in the model. And this is helpful for us to start to examine geological formation, slope, hill, things of that nature. I like to show this as an example of SketchUp, how it's just helpful just to look at different cities or regions that are impacted, or understanding where water might flow, or things like that. I pick Ohiopyle because it's a nice little valley, right? And so it's a great way just to examine the general terrain based on the general numbers of the elevations that are here. And that even helped us with our lodging study. We were looking at putting a hotel right here, and we had to understand that in order for the building to work, it would actually have to be built into the hillside, and so that impacts stormwater and all those other things. So the geolocation function that's built into SketchUp is no longer affiliated with Google. It is affiliated with Digital Globe, but it is helpful for some things just in terms of understanding overall terrain and the basic layout of a town or city. However, you're not dealing with a satellite image that is current. So it is helpful for a lot of things, giving us this character, but not for the purposes of this particular module. For the purpose of this particular module, we're going to need a high resolution photograph and something that's a little bit more current. So we'll just close out of that, or I can undo that either way. So we just have a very basic thing. I've already deleted out the scale figure. I'm going to go back to Google Earth and go back to Muncie. It's the Jackson 5 saying so gracefully. I'm going back to Indiana. Indiana, here I come. I'm going back to Indiana, because Indiana is where I'm from. You don't know that song, check it out. It's, so I would like you to think about a portion of Charles Street or one of the perpendicular streets in which you'd like to put in a parklet, a small urban intervention that might involve taking over 1 or 2 or 3 parking spaces somewhere along your corridor. Doesn't matter where. It doesn't have to be necessarily close to your proposed development area, but it might be a way of starting to think about injecting some life into a dead zone that you were considering, whether you're in the Near East, the Near East, or the Near West, or over in St. Lawrence, either way. So I'd like you to zoom in really far. So just don't forget that we have to reset the tilt and compass whenever we fly around in Google Earth. I do not have the terrain turned on. I do have the roads turned on, just as reference. I do not have 3D buildings turned on because, as we discovered recently, that this is what gave us the most recent image. The date is always shown in Google Earth as 6/16/2018. That's the closest image we can get to where we're looking at. So just zoom in on a portion of Charles Street that you'd like to work with in greater detail. Any nominations or thoughts for the on-screen demo?
Maybe between Charles and Liberty.
Okay. Well, Charles and Liberty intersect each other. So.
Between Franklin and
Okay.
Liberty.
All right, so we'll zoom in really far. I'm going to reset my tilt compass. Then, as we have before, I'll go to save the image. And this is where I really, really want to keep the scale bar here. That's really, really critical for me to keep. Right now it's at 100%, so we're looking at a 50-foot piece right there. That's perfect. This is going to give us a nice, fairly good resolution map that we can work from. I'm going to turn off the title and description and the legend. I don't need that, but I will keep the scale and compass just for reference. And I'll keep it at 100%, this nice big 50 foot. So you can see I've zoomed in pretty far. The street is taking up about a quarter of the view, but I can still see adjoining all these apartment houses on this side, plus the future apartments at the Rainbow Church, plus this surface parking here. Current resolution should be fine. If you want higher resolution, you can max it out at 4800. I'll give that a name. This is a 200 block west, I'm assuming. And then I will close Google Earth out. I need to save processor speed. I need to save RAM. So you'll find the more programs you have running, sometimes the slower your station will work. So. All right, I'm back in SketchUp. I'm gonna give this a name. So we're gonna come in with block. This 300, 200 west. Just so I can remember where we are. Start desktop. It's going to be SketchUp model. Instead of using the geolocation, I'm going to bring in that picture by going File, Import, Desktop, JPEG image, use as image. Okay? We exported from Google Earth a JPEG image. SketchUp will recognize a JPEG image. SketchUp wants to remind you that there are 3 ways to use a JPEG image. As an image, as a texture, like for a building material or surface, or as a matched photo. These are 3 totally different reasons to bring in an image. Carefully, do not click one of these other options. Do bring in that JPEG that you saved, the Charles Street 300 block that you just made as an image. Do not select it as anything else. It will come in like so, and we can lock it to an axis like so. We want it to be, and then we can scale it up to about there. Okay.
How do I get the person off of here?
Click on her and then click delete.
Oh, I can also see my name sheet.
So when you mouse over any of our handy tools in that top row, it'll tell you what they are. So when you just mouse over, you gently allow the mouse to see that. You'll start getting an orientation to several of the tools. I recommend the 20-minute intro to SketchUp video that the SketchUp website has. That's a nice primer for all these basic tools. But the most useful tool that you'll find is the orbit tool. It's that green and yellow arrow that allows us to orbit around the axes here. You can see the X, Y, and Z axis as a reference, the X, Y, and Z axis, in which around the origin point, in which we can zoom around there. Another useful one is the Zoom Extents tool, which is the magnifying glass with the 3 arrows. That will take whatever you have working with and will zoom it to the extent by which the window can be seen. At the moment, default in SketchUp is that we're looking at something in perspective view. You can see that this line here, this line here are vanishing to a vanishing point way up into the over left. We can turn that off by going to camera and then turning off perspective. And this will give us a slightly different looking view, but you can see now that this line and this line are now parallel to each other. You can now see that this line and this line are now parallel to each other. So this is much more of a standard view with no perspectival distortion whatsoever. Okay, so clicking off, going under camera and clicking, toggling perspective on and off makes a huge difference in terms of how the model is viewed in the working environment. This model is not geolocated and it is not scaled at this time. However, SketchUp does allow us to scale a model, and that's why our little reference bar down here was so important, because now we're going to scale the model. So everything we do from this point forward will be to scale. To do that, we grab our little measuring tape. Isn't it cute? Yeah, a little cute measuring tape up there. Measuring tape does two things. Two completely different things. It can be frustrating in terms of how it wants to toggle between these two things. You'll notice that there's a reminder down here in the lower bar that the Option key for Mac users toggles the ability to create guidelines. Those guidelines are going to be extremely helpful as we work, but that option, that using the Option key toggles the difference between it working as a standard measuring tape, like you would be measuring a piece of lumber, versus creating guidelines across the model itself. So it can be frustrating. Just know that key can toggle that ability to do it on or off. What I do next is I drag our little friend up here across this 50-foot measuring device. I click it once, and then I simply start typing 50, and then single quotation mark. 50 single quotation mark means 50 feet. Double quotes mean inches, so feet, inches. Single quote mark. I simply just start typing that, and it will enter into the length window in the lower right. I press enter, and SketchUp asks me, would you like to resize the model? And I say yes. And then I zoom extents, and I now have a scaled model to this 50-foot reference bar. Okay? That model is now scaled. That model is now scaled. All right. Okay. All right. Now, let's try the guidelines. So if we toggle that function, you can see that I can, from any line on the side of the model, I can grab and start pulling guidelines down. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to start placing guidelines where the setback of the building is, where the width of the sidewalk is, where the edge of the parking lot is. Thank you, Flatline Resources, for adding more surface parking. People love it. Edge of the curb.
This is still a tape measure.
This is still tape measure, but this is the toggling the control key for the Windows computers or the Option key for the Mac computers. What we're now doing is starting to create a grid of guidelines. This is still the tape measure tool, but this is its alternate function, which is super helpful for laying out sites. It's one of the more impressive tools for planners in the sense that we can drag out a series of guidelines for us to follow. So edges of properties, edges of alleys, edges of curves, things like that. We can drag it from either side. So this is just going to be a grid of guidelines. And then I'll orbit around and go, all right, we've got a series of guidelines now that we can follow as we will continue to work. now is a great time to reference our layers. SketchUp uses layers just like Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign do. So I have my layers menu. Right now, we just have one layer, and that's layer 0. Now, some folks draw everything on layer 0, and they're absolutely fine. If you're a furniture maker, an object maker, chances are you don't need multiple layers. In planning, though, it's helpful for us to start to draw things on different layers so we can turn them on and off, as well as layer in our proposals, our new streets, those sorts of things. So we need to get in the habit very early of starting to build up layers. So for instance, if I started at my first layer, I will go background aerial photo. That's my new layer. I can make that an active layer. But I need to with my pointer, just click on this reference image and then right-click Entity Info. I can move anything to a new layer by right-clicking on the thing, Entity Info, and I can tell it which layer it needs to go. Okay. Now that image is on the background aerial photo, and I can turn it on or off. Scale figure still over here. And anytime in SketchUp you have something that is on the wrong layer, simply right-click on the object itself and you can move it to a layer using Entity Info. Please practice that. You can see I've moved it to this secondary layer. Okay. To make a new layer, I can use this plus or minus symbol here in our layer menu. I can add another layer. Now I'm going to go asphalt pavement. As we say in Michigan, asphalt. Make that the active layer. And now I'm going to start drawing out, using the rectangle tool here, the area in which our pavement is occurring. Like so. And like so. And like so. This should say asphalt roadway, actually. Okay, so that's the active layer. I've now blanked in some things. Slight problem though. What's wrong? I can't see what's underneath them. Oh dear. Not good. So I go up to my paint bucket, and I click on the little brick. And I look at all these wonderful materials here. All these great little materials. Click on the little brick, and I go through these materials, and I go to glass. And I'm going to pick the glass, and I'm going to paint my new asphalt roadway glass. And you're like, but it's not glass. Oh no, it's not glass. But at least I can see through it now. Okay, so we can continue working on that. Okay, so now I can see the parking lines, I can see the stop line. I can at least for the moment while we're working on this existing layer, see everything that's below it. With asphalt pavement roadway still as the active layer as well, I can zoom in to my curves and corners, and I can begin to draw little arcs. Our arc tool is fascinating. There's arc, 2-point arc, 3-point arc, and pi. Everybody loves pi. But in this instance, I'm probably going to be interested in either an arc or a 2-point arc. This is how I'm going to do the curve. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to approximate where that is, and I can pull or push that arc, convex or concave. It's quite satisfying. You're like, ooh. And that will make the curve there. I'll do it again over here. Pull that arc over, out to where I think it is. push or pull it according to the curvature of the curb, and that will fill in there. This is still on the active layer asphalt pavement roadway, and then I will paint it glass for now. And as I work now, I can start to delete lines that I no longer need, and SketchUp will join them all as a contiguous surface, like so. You understand why we painted this glass so we could still see everything below it? That makes sense? Going to make another layer, and it's going to be the curb layer. This is now, I'm going to make that the active layer. Take my pencil, pull it over here, take it to the corner, take it over to here, and you can see if your lines are closed here, it will completely fill in like so. It should, if your lines are closed here, this will fill in. And again, we can't see what our building's below, so that will be a difference. But how tall are curbs? Roughly. How tall are they?
6 inches.
On 6 inches. So 6. Using it, once this is a closed shape, I use the quintessential tool, push-pull. The most satisfying tool in the SketchUp world is the push-pull tool. This is how we make most of our objects. We hover over this closed shape. It has to be a closed shape. I press on that and I start pulling it up in the Z-axis. That would be up. And I type in 6 double quote and I get a 6-inch curve. That is now a surface that is taller than the roadway. I'll do that again over yonder, over here. And I can see that is now a closed surface. I'm on active layer curve, push-pull tool, pull it up 6 inches. Whoops. Do it right, David. There. I'll close this in. Pull that up 6 inches. Then I will paint it a different color glass. Again, so we can see everything below it. Okay. So if we are successful with having these entities as closed objects and on the active layer curve, and we've painted them a different color glass, just so we can see through them for the moment. I'm going to make another one for buildings. Okay? That's only if you have buildings. Okay? If you only have flower beds or grass beds, that would be its own layer as well. Okay? At this point, I'm going to turn off curve. I'm going to turn that off, get it out of the way. Okay? Because I'm interested in these buildings alone at this point. So I'm still referencing this image, and now I can draw the existing buildings based on what that aerial is telling me, just as masses. Boop. Okay. Active layers buildings. Just tracing the edges of the property loosely. I'm not concerned too terribly about detail.
Can we turn off snapping?
Yes, you can turn it off if you want. I don't recommend it, but you can. You have the ability of turning off on and off snap. So I'm just drawing now the outlines of my buildings.
Are you holding down the options button when you do that, or?
I'm not. And if you start a line you don't like, just hit the escape key and it will go back to the previous line that preceded it. If you get frustrated, the escape key is a wonderful key in SketchUp. Like there. Erasing stuff. The eraser tool allows you to erase specific things. If you need to erase a group of things, SketchUp has a logic for how things are erased. If we grab the pointer tool and I drag over things from the left to the right, it will select only things that are contained within the selection box. This is very important. You're selecting different things. If I select from the left to the right using this pointer tool, it will only select entire entities within that selection box. If I select from the right to the left, it will select everything that it intersects. Try that out for me and see how that works. So selecting things from the right to the left does one thing, selecting things from the right to the left does another thing. So that's if you want to select multiple things in a group. I'm just going to use a rectangle for this building, for the church here, which is now apartments. And turn things off as needed. Building heights. Building heights. Go back to Google Earth. Estimating building heights. We can do this from field measurement. We can do it from photos. We can do it from records. Some cities have all their building heights entered, which is really great data. We're doing a very precise building survey. Of course, we go into some very specific building height estimation. However, if we simply turn on the terrain and the 3D buildings layer in Google Earth, we can zoom in onto our block, our desired block, and I can grab the measuring tool and the option of 3D path in feet and drag it up the side of the building. Okay. So this gives me a ballpark figure of how tall that building is. It's giving me 33, so it's probably 32, 34. Okay, the second house here. Also about 30, between 34 and 35. I clear it each time. My little law office that is now apartments is 24. The church is about, let's see here, about 30, 32. Okay, so Google Earth will give you a ballpark figure on building heights. Come back to SketchUp, push-pull tool, buildings, active layer, 24 feet, that's 24 single quote mark. 34 feet. This was 36, between 34 and 36. And we have a problem here. I think because it's locked in with the curve layer. Fix that here. Rectangle. 24 feet. Okay. So, these are my buildings. Here they are. I have 3 buildings visible. I can paint those any color I want. I can leave them white, whatever works for us. What's nice though is that I can turn them off. So my next layer is going to be landscape. I'm just going to turn the buildings off. Okay, so for landscape, now's a great opportunity to show the potential of the 3D warehouse. I have a couple of trees visible here. So if I open up, go to window and then 3D warehouse, there are thousands of predetermined objects that are in here. So if we just go tree, it will bring us a variety of species that are usable. But the 3D warehouse has a couple of different variations to consider when we're picking a component to bring into our model. The first is there are trees which are completely three-dimensionally modeled, full 3D. They're really big files. And when you load them into your SketchUp model, they add to the size of your SketchUp model, which can drag down your RAM and drag down your processing power. Billions of polygons go into that three-dimensional model tree. There are some trees that are, as this indicates 3D, as I said, there are some trees that are two-dimensional images smashed together. That's all they are, is just two-dimensional images slotted together like so. But they work for a lot of folks because that when you pan around the model, it looks like sort of a tree. There are some trees that are just two-dimensional pieces. When you bring them into the model, they follow the camera. They follow the camera. So, yeah, I'll show you what that means. Not that we are landscape architects by any measure of the word, but a honey locust is a popular street tree. And we can see, again, some options. Some will say low poly, which means low polygon. 2D face me is going to be the two-dimensional tree that follows you around. And you can see other examples of that. And this here would be a 3D model that's full polygon. I mean, that thing is a fairly big component that's going to drag down your RAM. So if I type in honey locust as a species and I grab this 34K face me skyline tree, I'm going to click on that and I'm going to go download, and SketchUp will say, do we want to load this directly into the model? Yes. And it will bring it in fairly small, looks like, there. And we then can grab the scale tool. This is an important tool. The scale tool is that little box with the arrow pointing to the upper right. And this allows me to uniformly scale an object about like so. So you can see you can pull it up and down. And I'm going to just place this tree about where that tree is occurring. So I'll pan around. It's on the surface now, but you notice that it follows you around like a creeper. Okay, like, hey, hey, come here often. Okay. All right. So I need to move it. So I've got this four-way arrow thing called the move. move tool. I'll just move that right into there. Okay. And I've got a different situation with this larger tree here. It's probably it's another street tree. I'll go back to the 3D warehouse, and I'll just, it's another great Indiana tree. Let's see, hickory. Hickory tree. And you see again examples of a two-dimensional schematic tree or this 2D tree. That's not really working for me, so we can go to Sycamore 2D. Probably closer, and just find trees that are appropriate for our model. Another option also is just to grab this thing and edit, copy, paste it in different places. So we can start to do that. A couple of them in there. And again, like crazy people at a party, they just follow the camera around like that. So sometimes we have to move them down, back in place. And they're floating around, so sometimes we have to just grab these things and put them back in their place. And what they will do is follow the camera around. So just move around, grab a tree, get comfortable with it, move it into place, start placing the trees based on where you're seeing them on your aerial. It looks something like that. Okay. Now, I'm going to turn everything else back on. We're starting to take some shape now, right? So, come in, and I need to reference. I'm just going to draw some lines where these parking spots are. There's 2 parking spots in this particular place. Some of you have considerably more. Some of you have some diagonal parking. So if you're picking like the area in front of the Murray building or something like that, there might be quite a few diagonal parking spots there. I need to draw also crosswalks. I want to reference those. If they exist. Just with a line, we'll do more with that, with color and things like that. Stop line is over here. I need to be back on asphalt pavement as a reminder. So I'm drawing the stop line and just paint that white. The crayon box is just a nice, simple way of painting colors in SketchUp. And then I want the drive line. I just want to reference that so I remember where the drive lane is for the opposing traffic. I'll orbit around. Oh, all right. So if I'm interested in this shrubbery over here, I'll find some shrubbery and be the shrub that I was meant to be. Those are other plants that you can start to bring in. You can continue to, if this is of interest to you, you can continue to draw the plant lines there. Let's see, I'm going to make another layer. I'm going to call it existing parked cars. Make that the active layer. Go back to the 3D warehouse. And cars are extensive in the 3D warehouse, so I just want the simplest car I can get. absolutely simple car, because folks have modeled, cars to their exact dimensions and things like that. I just need very simple stuff to represent a parked car in the context. I don't need the 2018 Nissan Sentra or anything like that. You can go that very specific in the cars that are here in the 3D warehouse.
Can we get the bottom one, third column? Not too large. Third column.
It's not bad. It's not bad. Look, it's directly into the model. Where is it? Where are you? Okay, there it is. So I need to zoom down and move that into position using the move tool. And then the rotate tool, which is these two arrows here, gives us a little bit of a protractor. I need to grab one corner, drag out a tail, and then move it like so. The car doesn't look right.
It's in the wrong direction.
Well, it is, and it's also quite small. So I'll try to. That doesn't look right on here, but so some of these are scaled and some of them are not, which is really kind of concerning me all of a sudden. But at least we have the ability to handle that ourselves. So we move that up into position right above the roadway. We will grab the scale tool and I will scale uniform scale about the opposite point. And scale it down. Yeah. So some of the cars in the 3D warehouse are pretty good, some are not. So we just have to explore them. And I'll turn it now into its correct direction, which it already is. Great. Thanks. Put that there into the park position. Just scale that button a little down a bit more. So this is existing parked cars layer. Warehouse. Circle on that. $10K, it's not bad. A little bit bigger, but these models do vary. Like that one. I'll tell you. So just go for the simplest cars you can find. Boy, that's really tough. Anywho, that's a toy car. Look at that. Hey, check out my new car. Can't find it, but I'll just make that a little bit bigger, shall we? Yes, bigger. Yes. Turn that around. I grab one corner with the rotate tool and go whoop. Whoop. Better than I can parallel park. Okay. All right. Okay. So bringing in trees, bringing in cars, helps us understand our existing conditions a little bit. I can copy and paste that Toyota, place it anywhere else in the model, put it in that parking space. I can grab the truck. That in the other parking space. I can start to populate the model. Okay. No. Now, go back to asphalt pavement roadway, and we've got everything we need from the aerial photo. So I'm just going to paint that a light gray. And then we have everything from the curb that we need. Maybe. Yeah. I'm gonna do a little bit more landscape over here. Because there's still some more stuff over there. I'm in landscape now. Paint that a light green. Not that much. I can pick landscaping materials as well. There's quite a bit of stuff loaded in there, some specific grasses. Tree still needs to move a little bit. Yeah. Still quite a bit I have left to do. I have to draw the sidewalk on this side, things like that. This landscape layer, I'm starting to fill in some of the details here. Don't stress out about the details. Just get the general sense of what's there in the context. Curb. Got the active layer again. So I'm going to paint the curb a different color. We had it painted green glass here in the example. So I'm going to paint that a different color. So I can look at paving, I can look at concrete, I can look at concrete colors, or I can just pick a simple gray. So that starts to fill in. That starts to cover up our aerial entirely. You can save the aerial or you can delete it, turn it off, and then just kind of review now the layers that are there and not there, toggling them on and off. Can't hide the current layer. Existing parked cars. It should be curved. Check some of your entities, make sure they're on the right layer. Okay. I'll turn everything else on now, except for the aerial photo. I'll go to camera, standard views, ISO, and it will create an isometric view from the general camera angle that you were working from. This is a square corner down here in reality, but in this view, it's a 30 degree isometric view, which allows us to look down on the intersection of the block, but also see the sides of buildings. Okay, it's frequently used in video games, in gaming. So if we notice now, if we were to turn on perspective and then zoom extents, we would see a 3/4 aerial view with the slight perspectival distortion, right, that we are used to in reality. So that gives us an entirely different view as well. So play with those, understand the difference between having perspective turned on or turned off. turn off. If we go to view and then turn off the axes, it'll turn off the axes. If we go to view and we turn off the guides, it will hide all of your guidelines. And this starts to take shape now, isn't it? It's starting to take shape. So at that point, when you reach a point when you feel that you have achieved a level of detail that is satisfactory for the existing conditions that you have, you might continue to add cars, you might add some people, okay? All those things are in the 3D warehouse. We then go to File, Export, 2D Graphic. And we have some choices now. SketchUp will export to AutoCAD, it'll export as to PDF, it'll export as a tag image, PNG, JPEG, whatever. I like the PNG for this option. So I'm going to show you what we can do with it. PNG options, use the view size, or I can push this image to whatever size I want it to be. Okay? Rendering anti-aliasing means smoothing of curves and lines, and my favorite option for the PNG, transparent background. Okay? So I have all that clicked on. I'm really excited now. I can push the resolution if I want, okay? Or I can just use the view size. Super excited. Oh my goodness, it's going to be great. Export. There it is. Okay. We exported it as a PNG with the transparent background. That means this background is not active. That means we can float this on anything. Okay? All right? For instance, let's just for fun, open up a little PowerPoint. Oh, it's going to be great. I'm so excited. Oh, I love this. This is what I love this on SketchUp. Is that this now becomes an operable thing. So let's pick the most outlandish background we can. Craziest. Oh my goodness, look at all this crap. Get rid of all that. Whatever. I'm going to take that PNG now and I'm going to place it over. Look at that. When we select PNG and select and click the option for the transparent background. Okay? There's no background. So we can float it on anything. Okay? You can take it in Illustrator then, and you can mark it up, label it up, diagram it up. Make sense? Okay. Other options. View, if we go back to SketchUp, View, Tools, that's the PNG. So, shadows. Go to View, Shadows. Look at those. Okay. Now, this isn't geolocated, is it? So the shadows aren't correct at this moment. The sun is, well, this would actually work because this is afternoon sun. So that's east, that's west. So this is actually working by dumb luck. We have afternoon sun casting here. If your model is geolocated, it will accurately show the shadows at a time and date of your choosing. So if your model is geolocated. Ours is not, but we're just completely lucky here that we got that. So if I click on the shadows, I toggle that off and on. Then I export it again. 2D graphic, PNG, option, transparent background. I do it again, export, replace. The shadows will go through as well. Look at that. See the shadow edge? That's how you model your existing conditions. Please, please use the layers. Your layers are extremely important to conserve your RAM and your processing speed, number one. Number two, they're incredibly important in terms of isolating information. If you ever want to isolate something, you don't like those trees, and you find a better one in Photoshop, turn off the trees and then export it. Put it in a Photoshop tree instead. Third reason is that we're going to make changes to this model. We'll do that next class, okay? Thanks.